The numbers on Maya Richardson's computer screen blurred together as thunder rolled across Charleston's harbor. Rain hammered against the windows of Harmony Home Care's tiny office, matching the storm building inside her chest. $3,000 missing from the operating account. Then another withdrawal. Another. The pattern emerged like a poisonous snake uncoiling in the spreadsheet's columns. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard as she cross-referenced the dates. Every withdrawal corresponded with days Richard had volunteered to make the bank deposits. Her boyfriend of 2 years, the man who'd held her hand at Marcus's grave on the anniversary of her husband's death, the man she'd given her business checkbook to because he'd said he wanted to help lighten her load, the man she'd foolishly added as an authorized signer when he'd convinced her she needed backup access in case something happened to her. "No," she whispered into the empty office. "Please God, no." But the evidence was there in black and white. Forged signatures on transfer authorizations, her business account being slowly drained into an account she didn't recognize. The insurance money Marcus had left her, the foundation of everything she'd built, disappearing in careful increments that she'd been too busy, too trusting to notice. Her phone buzzed, and her heart jumped. The bank's number flashed on the screen. "Miss Richardson, this is David Chen from First Charleston Bank." The voice was apologetic but firm. "I'm calling about your business line of credit. We've noticed some irregularities, and without immediate payment of the outstanding balance, we'll have no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings." The office tilted. Maya gripped the desk's edge, her knuckles going white. "There must be some mistake. I've been making payments. According to our records, you're 4 months behind. The letters we've sent, I never received any letters." A pause. "They were sent to a P.O. box listed as your business address." A P.O. box she'd never opened. A P.O. box Richard had suggested they get for business mail because her home mailbox was always overflowing. Her stomach turned to ice. "How much?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. $47,000, due within 30 days, or we'll be forced to proceed with foreclosure on both the business and the property you used as collateral." The property. Her home. The house where she'd built a life with Marcus, where she'd grieved him, where she'd slowly learned to breathe again. The house she'd risked everything on because Richard had convinced her that expanding Harmony Home Care was God's plan for her future. After the call ended, Maya sat in the darkness, listening to the rain. The office walls held photos of her clients, elderly faces beaming beside her own, testimonials of lives touched, dignity restored. Mr. Thompson, the 82-year-old veteran who called her his angel. Mrs. Patterson, who'd survived breast cancer and needed help with wound care. The Johnson family, caring for their mother with Alzheimer's. All of it about to disappear because she'd trusted the wrong man. Her phone lit up again. A text message. But not from Richard. From Simone Carter, her best friend since college. The woman who'd stood beside her at Marcus's funeral, who'd helped her launch Harmony Home Care, who'd managed the office and knew every detail of the business. The text was simple. "You should come to Richard's place, now." Maya's hands shook as she grabbed her keys. The storm had intensified, wind whipping palmetto fronds against streetlights as she drove through Charleston's historic district. She'd call Richard, demand answers, make him fix this. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he'd made mistakes. Maybe... She pulled up outside Richard's apartment complex, and her heart stopped. Simone's silver BMW was parked in Richard's designated spot. At 10:30 on a Wednesday night. Maya's chest tightened. She climbed the exterior stairs, her heels clicking against wet concrete. Through Richard's second-floor window, she could see golden light and movement. Laughter drifted through the storm. She didn't knock. The spare key Richard had given her turned smoothly in the lock. The apartment was transformed. Champagne bottles littered the coffee table. Real estate documents were spread across the dining table. Glossy photos of commercial properties, business plans with a logo she didn't recognize, Premier Care Solutions. And there, on the couch, sat Richard and Simone, his arm around her shoulders, her head tilted against his chest, both of them staring at a laptop screen, pointing and laughing. "The best part," Richard was saying, "is that she never even checked the account statements, too busy playing Florence Nightingale to notice we were building an empire right under her nose." Simone's laugh was sharp, familiar. God, she's so trusting. Remember when she gave me that necklace? Her grandmother's necklace? She actually believed I needed to borrow it for a funeral. Maya's hand flew to her throat. The empty space where her grandmother's gold cross had hung before she'd lent it to Simone 3 months ago, for what Simone had claimed was her aunt's memorial service. The necklace that now glittered at Simone's throat. Well, Richard said, pulling Simone closer, tomorrow we sign the lease on our new office. 6 months from now, Premier Care Solutions will have stolen half her clients and she'll be bankrupt. Then we'll buy Harmony Home Care for pennies on the dollar and absorb what's left. Poetic justice, Simone said, and they clinked champagne glasses. Maya's vision tunneled. The room spun. A sound escaped her throat, something between a gasp and a sob, and both of them turned. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. Then Simone smiled. Actually smiled. Oh, Maya, you really should learn to call first. Richard stood, not bothering to remove his arm from Simone's shoulders. His face showed no shame, no regret, just cold calculation. How much did you hear? Enough. Maya's voice was steady despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. You've been stealing from me, both of you. Stealing is such an ugly word, Richard said, straightening his collar. We prefer to think of it as reclaiming what we earned. Do you know how exhausting it was pretending to care about your little charity project? Listening to you pray over every decision? Watching you give away services to people who couldn't even pay? Those people needed help. Those people are a liability, Simone interrupted, standing now. You can't build a real business on compassion, Maya. That's why you'll always be small time. Richard and I understand what it takes to succeed. Maya's eyes burned. I trusted you, both of you. After Marcus died, you were all I had. And you were so grateful, Simone said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. So easy to manipulate. Every time I told you how noble you were, how selfless, you'd hand over more control, more access. She touched the necklace. This? You gave it to me because I mentioned once that I admired it. You're a doormat, Maya. You always have been. Marcus would be ashamed, Richard added, and those words hit like a physical blow. Wasting his legacy on people who don't matter. At least we'll put his money to good use building something that actually generates profit. The rain pounded harder. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. Marcus's face flashed through her mind. His smile on their wedding day, his hand in hers during chemo appointments he'd never told her about until it was too late. His last words. Build something beautiful, baby. Help people. She'd tried. God knows she'd tried, and these two had turned her dream into their stepping stone. I'll call the police, she said, her voice breaking. I'll report everything. With what evidence? Richard crossed his arms. I've been careful. Every transfer has your signature. Every authorization went through your email account, the one I've had access to for 2 years. As far as any court will see, you mismanaged your own business into the ground. Simone laughed again. Besides, who's going to believe you? The grieving widow who can't let go of her dead husband? The woman so desperate for love she'd believe anything? Face it, Maya, you lost, again. Maya backed toward the door, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let them see. Her hand found the doorknob. You'll answer for this, maybe not to me, but to God, and that's worse. Save the church talk, Richard called after her. Nobody builds an empire by caring too much. You should try being selfish for once. You might actually succeed. The door slammed behind her. Maya stumbled down the stairs, the rain immediately soaking through her clothes. She made it to her car before the sobs came. Great wrenching sounds that tore from her chest like something vital being ripped away. Not again. She couldn't lose everything again. She drove without seeing, wipers slapping futilely against the downpour. Streetlights blurred into watercolor smears. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Texts from Simone, probably, or Richard. But she couldn't look, couldn't bear to see what other cruelties they'd thought of. I'm done, she whispered to the empty car. I'm done being everybody's fool. I'm done trusting. I'm done believing in people. The words echoed back at her, hollow and broken. The highway stretched ahead, dark and endless. Maya followed it without thinking, putting distance between herself and the wreckage of her life. Rain hammered the windshield so hard she could barely see the exit sign. Hospital district, next right. She took it instinctively, muscle memory from years of visiting clients in the medical center. The dashboard clock read 11:47. Nearly midnight, and she had nowhere to go. Couldn't face her empty house, couldn't drive anymore with tears blurring her vision worse than the rain. A neon sign appeared through the storm. Mercy Diner, open 24 hours. Its pink and blue glow reflected off puddles in the parking lot. Maya pulled in, killed the engine, and sat listening to rain drum on the roof. Inside, fluorescent lights cast everything in harsh relief. The place was nearly empty. A tired nurse in scrubs at the counter, a young couple in a corner booth, and near the door, a manager in a stained polo shirt looming over someone at a table. "I told you last week," the manager was saying, his voice sharp enough to cut through the diner's quiet. "We can't have your kind in here scaring off paying customers. You want food. Go to a shelter." Maya's eyes focused on the man at the table. He wore military surplus fatigues, threadbare and rain-soaked. A worn backpack sat at his feet. His dark hair was longer than regulation, and several days of stubble shadowed his jaw. But it was his hands that caught her attention, calloused and weathered, yet they held a coffee cup with unexpected grace. "I have money," the man said quietly, his voice educated, controlled. "I can pay for a meal." "Yeah, right." The manager reached for the coffee cup. "That's what they all say. Time to go." Something in Maya snapped. Maybe it was the injustice. Maybe it was having just watched two people she loved reveal themselves as monsters. Maybe it was exhaustion or rage or the need to do one good thing in a world gone wrong. She was on her feet before she'd decided to move. "Excuse me." Her voice rang out clear and firm. "That man is with me." The manager turned, surprised. The homeless man looked up, and Maya found herself caught in the most honest pair of eyes she'd ever seen. They were gray-green, like the ocean before a storm, and they held both weariness and an unexpected dignity. "Ma'am, I don't think you understand," the manager began. "I understand perfectly." Maya pulled out, her wallet placing 2 20s on the table. "He's my guest. We'll both have the blue plate special, and your rudeness won't be necessary." The manager's face reddened, but he took the money and retreated. Maya slid into the booth across from the stranger, her heart pounding. What was she doing? She didn't know this man. For all she knew, he could be dangerous. But when he looked at her, she didn't see danger. She saw something that mirrored what she felt, bone-deep exhaustion and a soul that had been kicked too many times. "Thank you," he said softly. "You didn't have to do that." "I know." Maya wiped rain from her face, realizing she must look as bedraggled as he did. Tonight I watched the worst people I know act like monsters. I needed to remember that kindness still exists." He studied her with those storm-colored eyes. "Bad night?" A laugh escaped her, sharp and bitter. "That's one way to put it. My boyfriend and best friend have been stealing from me, destroying my business, and planning to leave me with nothing, and I was too stupid to see it coming." The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Maybe it was because he was a stranger. Maybe it was because she'd hit her breaking point. But sitting across from this man who had nothing, who'd been treated like nothing, made her own losses feel both enormous and, strangely, manageable. "You're not stupid," he said quietly. "You're trusting. Those aren't the same thing." "Feels like it tonight." The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, brought their food. Maya realized she hadn't eaten since breakfast. The meatloaf was simple but warm, and they ate in surprisingly comfortable silence. "I'm Maya," she said finally. "Maya Richardson." He hesitated just for a moment. "Daniel. Danny." "Military?" She nodded at his jacket. "Medic. 2 tours." He didn't elaborate, but something in his voice suggested stories he didn't tell. They talked as the storm raged outside. Danny had the kind of intelligence that showed in his questions, thoughtful, insightful. He asked about her business, and when she explained home health care, his eyes lit up. "That's noble work," he said. "Taking care of people in their most vulnerable moments. That takes a special kind of strength." "Or stupidity," Maya said, echoing Richard's words. "According to some people, you can't build a real business on compassion." "Those people are wrong." Danny's voice carried quiet conviction. "The world needs more people who care, not fewer. Anyone can make money. Not everyone can make a difference." Something about his words, the sincerity in them, made Maya's eyes sting with fresh tears. When had someone last validated what she was trying to build instead of criticizing it? "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Why are you here? I mean, you clearly have education, medical training. You speak like I wasn't always homeless?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Life has a way of stripping away everything you thought defined you. Sometimes you lose your job, your home, your identity. What's left is either who you really are or nothing at all." The rawness in his words resonated through Maya's chest. Wasn't that exactly what had happened tonight? Everything she'd built her identity on, being a good judge of character, being loved, being successful, had been revealed as illusion. "What if there's nothing left?" she whispered. "Then you're free to become something new." They sat with that truth as the diner's lights hummed overhead. Outside, the storm was beginning to ease, rain softening to a steady patter. "You know what's crazy?" Maya heard herself say. "I spent 2 years planning a future with someone who was lying to me. Maybe I should just marry a stranger instead. Couldn't hurt worse than what I had." She meant it as a joke, a bitter laugh at her own expense. But Danny didn't smile. "Then marry me." Maya's head snapped up. He was looking at her with complete seriousness, his storm-colored eyes steady and calm. "That's not funny," she said. "I'm not trying to be funny." He leaned forward slightly. "You're hurting right now because someone you loved saw you as a transaction. They saw your kindness as weakness, your trust as an opportunity. And you're different?" "I'm honest about what I have to offer." "Which is nothing." He gestured at himself, the worn clothes, the backpack. "No money, no house, no complicated past relationships that will come back to haunt us. Just this. I see you defending someone you don't know because it's the right thing to do. I see you hurting but still trying to help. That tells me more about who you are than 2 years of dating ever revealed to your ex." "You don't know me," Maya protested weakly. "I know you paid for a stranger's meal without judgment. I know you stood up to that manager. I know you're strong enough to keep going even when you want to quit." He paused. "And I know what it's like to have people you trusted betray everything you believed about them." His words carried the weight of experience. Maya found herself leaning forward, drawn to the pain she heard echoing beneath his calm surface. "Why would you want to marry me?" she asked. "You don't know if I'm crazy. I could be the one who's unstable." "Are you?" "No, but here's what I know," Danny said quietly. "In my experience, the people worth trusting are the ones who've been broken and still choose kindness. You've had your heart ripped out tonight, and your first instinct was to defend someone who couldn't defend himself. That's rare, Maya. That's valuable." The diner felt suspended in time. Rain streaked the windows. The fluorescent lights hummed. Maya's entire world had imploded, and here sat a stranger offering her something impossible. "I don't believe in love anymore," she said. "Good. Neither do I, not the fairy tale kind." Danny's hands wrapped around his coffee cup. "But I believe in respect, in honesty, in two people choosing to build something real instead of performing something fake. If love can't start with money or history, maybe it can start with mutual respect between two broken people who've learned the hard way what really matters." Maya's throat tightened. Everything in her screamed that this was insane. You didn't marry strangers. You didn't make life-altering decisions at midnight in a diner after the worst day of your life. But then again, careful planning had gotten her Richard. Trust had gotten her Simone. Maybe madness was exactly what she needed. "What would people say?" she whispered. "Does it matter?" Danny asked gently. "The people whose opinions you valued most just revealed they never really knew you at all. Maybe it's time to stop living for people who don't see your worth." He was right. God help her, he was right. "This is crazy," Maya said. "Probably. We could regret this. We could." He met her eyes. "Or we could look back on this as the moment we both chose something real in a world full of pretty lies." Outside, the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean. Maya thought of Marcus, of the vows they'd shared, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Those vows had ended at death, but they'd been real while they lasted. Maybe real was all that mattered. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Yes?" Danny's eyes widened slightly, as if he'd expected her to say no. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. Maya laughed, a real laugh this time, surprised and slightly hysterical. I have no idea what I'm doing, but yes. Let's do something crazy. Let's choose something real. He reached across the table, and when his calloused hand closed around hers, Maya felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet, but possibility, hope. The sense that maybe, just maybe, God hadn't abandoned her after all. The waitress refilled their coffee, giving them a knowing smile. Outside, Charleston was waking up. The sky blushed pink and gold over the harbor, and in a little diner near the hospital district, two broken people made an impossible decision. No regrets? Danny asked softly. Maya thought of Richard and Simone, of her business crumbling, of losing Marcus and learning to breathe again, only to have the world knock her down once more. No regrets, she said. Not about this. They sat together as dawn broke over Charleston, hands joined across a diner table, strangers bound by faith and desperation, and the wild hope that sometimes the craziest decisions are the ones that save your life. Tell me in the comments, would you take a leap of faith like Maya? And don't forget to subscribe. This story is just beginning. Chapter 2. The morning sun painted Charleston in shades of gold and rose as Maya and Danny drove through the awakening city. Neither had slept, but Maya felt strangely alert, as if she'd stepped through a doorway into a life that ran on different rules than the one she'd left behind. I know a place, Danny said quietly from the passenger seat. A small church. The pastor there, she's someone I trust. Maya glanced at him. You have connections here? A few. His smile was gentle. Even people who fall through the cracks leave threads behind. The church sat tucked between live oaks draped in Spanish moss, a humble white building with a modest steeple. The sign out front read, New Mercy Fellowship, Pastor Gloria Mitchell, all welcome. Pastor Gloria answered the door in jeans and a sweater, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She was perhaps 65, with warm brown skin and eyes that seemed to see straight through to the soul. When she saw Danny, her face registered shock, then something more complicated, recognition mixed with concern. Daniel James, she said softly. It's been a long time. Too long, Aunt Gloria. Aunt Maya's mind spun. Danny had family here, family who knew him by a different name. Pastor Gloria's eyes moved to Maya, assessing. And who's this? This is Maya Richardson, Danny said. We'd like you to marry us. The pastor's eyebrows rose. Come inside. This sounds like a conversation that needs coffee. The church office was small but welcoming, filled with books and the scent of vanilla candles. Pastor Gloria poured coffee from a carafe, her movements deliberate as she studied them both. Daniel, she said finally, the last time I saw you was at Margaret's funeral. You said you needed to disappear for a while, find yourself again. That was 4 years ago. Danny's jaw tightened. I found what I was looking for. In a diner at midnight? The pastor's voice held no judgment, only curiosity. She turned to Maya. Child, tell me your story, and tell me true. Is someone forcing you into this? Maya shook her head. Everything poured out, Richard's betrayal, Simone's deception, the financial ruin waiting for her, the way Danny had shown her kindness when her world was ending. Pastor Gloria listened without interrupting, her face growing softer with each revelation. So you want to marry a man you just met, the pastor said when Maya finished, out of hurt and anger and desperation. No, Maya surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. I want to marry him because in 3 hours he's shown me more honesty than 2 years with Richard ever did. Because he sees me as a person, not an opportunity. Because, her voice caught, because I'm tired of choosing carefully and still getting hurt. Maybe it's time to choose recklessly and see what God does with it. Pastor Gloria was quiet for a long moment, her fingers steepled beneath her chin. Finally she looked at Danny. You've told her who you really are? I've told her who I am now, Danny said carefully. The rest, the past, it doesn't matter. It might matter to her. Then I'll tell her when she's ready to hear it, but I won't start our marriage with fear that she's only staying because of what I used to have. The pastor sighed. but Maya saw understanding in her eyes. Marriage isn't a bandage for wounds, children. It's a commitment that requires both people to show up whole or willing to become whole together. We know it's unconventional, Maya said, but Pastor, I've done everything the right way. I married Marcus in a big church ceremony with 200 guests. We dated for 3 years first, did everything by the book, and I loved him with my whole heart until cancer took him from me. Tears stung her eyes. Then I tried again with Richard, took it slow, introduced him to my church family, let him into my business, my life, my heart, and he destroyed me. She looked at Danny, at his weathered hands and honest eyes. Maybe God's path for me doesn't look like everyone else's. Maybe this stranger who defended his dignity in a diner is exactly who I need to learn to trust again. Pastor Gloria stood, moving to the window. Outside, morning light filtered through the oak trees. You know what I see when I look at you two? I see my own story. 43 years ago, I met Joseph Mitchell at a bus station. I was running from an abusive home. He was a seminary student who offered me shelter with his aunt until I could figure things out. She turned back to them. We married 3 weeks later. Everyone said we were crazy. Maybe we were. But sometimes God uses our desperate moments to redirect our path. Hope bloomed in Maya's chest. You understand? I understand that conventional wisdom isn't the same as God's wisdom. The pastor smiled. But I need you both to be clear about what you're promising. This isn't a temporary arrangement. This isn't spite or revenge on your ex-boyfriend. If I marry you, I'm asking you to honor these vows as sacred. Can you do that? Danny reached for Maya's hand. I can. Maya felt the calluses on his palm, the strength in his grip. I can. Then let's get you married. The sanctuary was simple but beautiful. Morning light streamed through stained glass windows, painting the worn wooden pews in jewel tones. Pastor Gloria had called 2 church members to serve as witnesses, an elderly deacon named Mr. Foster and a young woman named Tasha who led the youth ministry. Maya stood in the same rain-dampened clothes from the night before, but Pastor Gloria had draped a beautiful lace shawl over her shoulders. My mother's, she'd said, something borrowed. Danny had washed his face in the church bathroom, but he still wore his military surplus jacket and worn jeans. Yet, standing before the altar, with sunlight catching the silver in his dark hair, he looked noble, dignified, real. Pastor Gloria opened her worn Bible. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Marriage is not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, prayerfully, and in the knowledge that God can transform even our most desperate decisions into blessings beyond imagination. She looked at them both. Daniel James, do you take Maya Elizabeth Richardson to be your lawfully wedded wife? Do you promise to be honest with her, to respect her, to walk beside her in whatever path God leads, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live? Danny's voice was steady and clear. I do, and I promise, Maya, to show you every day that you made the right choice, to prove that not all men lie, to build something real with you, brick by brick, if you'll let me. Tears slipped down Maya's cheeks as Pastor Gloria turned to her. Maya Elizabeth Richardson, do you take Daniel James to be your lawfully wedded husband? Do you promise to trust him, to give him the grace to be imperfect, to walk beside him in faith, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, as long as you both shall live? I do. Maya's voice shook but held firm. I promise to see you for who you are, not who I'm afraid you might be. To choose faith over fear. To build something beautiful with you, even if I don't know what that looks like yet. Pastor Gloria produced 2 simple gold bands. These rings are a symbol of your commitment, an unbroken circle representing love that endures. Daniel, place this ring on Maya's finger and repeat after me. With this ring, I thee wed. Danny's hands were gentle as he slid the band onto her finger. With this ring, I thee wed. Maya placed this ring on Daniel's finger. The band was warm in her palm. Maya slipped it onto Danny's work-roughened finger, marveling at how right it looked there. With this ring, I thee wed, by the power vested in me by God and the state of South Carolina. Pastor Gloria said, her voice full of emotion. "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss your bride." Danny's hands cupped Maya's face with infinite gentleness. When his lips met hers, the kiss was soft, reverent, and tasted of coffee and new beginnings. It lasted only a moment, but something in Maya's chest cracked open, not breaking, but blooming, like a seed that had been dormant, finally feeling sunlight. Mr. Foster clapped. Tasha dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, and Pastor Gloria beamed at them both as church bells from somewhere in the neighborhood began to ring, marking the hour. "Go forward in grace," the pastor said, "and come back to visit me. I want to hear how this wild story unfolds." Maya's house was a small craftsman bungalow in a quiet neighborhood, painted yellow with white trim and surrounded by azalea bushes. She unlocked the door with shaking hands, suddenly aware that she was bringing a stranger, no, her husband, into the home she'd shared with Marcus. "It's not much," she said, stepping inside. The living room held worn furniture and family photos. Marcus smiled from frames on the mantel, forever frozen at 41. Danny's eyes moved to the photos, but his expression remained respectful. "It's a home. That's everything." Maya showed him the spare room, small but clean, with a twin bed and a window overlooking the backyard. "I know it's not ideal, but it's perfect," Danny said firmly. "Maya, I've been sleeping in shelters and under bridges for months. This is a palace." That evening, as Maya showed Danny around the house, he pulled out a basic flip phone from his backpack, one of those prepaid models from the convenience store. "I need to get a phone," Maya said, thinking out loud. "For client calls. I can add you to my plan if you want something better than that." "This works fine for now," Danny said quickly. "I'm not much for technology anyway." It was a small moment, easily forgotten, but Maya would remember it later, how he'd been so careful to keep his world small, his needs minimal, his identity invisible. She left him to settle in, retreating to her own room where she finally changed out of yesterday's clothes. When she emerged, Danny was in the kitchen, and the smell of coffee filled the air. "I found your coffee maker," he said. "Hope you don't mind." "Mind? You're a miracle worker." Maya accepted the mug gratefully. They stood in the kitchen, sipping coffee as morning stretched toward afternoon, neither quite sure what to say now that the impulsiveness had worn off. "I should probably call my office," Maya said finally. "Let them know." She stopped. What would she tell them? That she'd married a homeless veteran she met 12 hours ago, that Richard and Simone had betrayed her, that everything was falling apart? "One thing at a time," Danny said gently. "What's the most urgent fire?" Maya pulled out her laptop and showed him the financial situation, the missing money, the foreclosure threat, the business hemorrhaging from Richard's sabotage. Danny studied the numbers with focused intensity. "You need immediate cash flow and you need to stop the bleeding. May I?" He gestured at the keyboard. Maya nodded, watching as his fingers moved with surprising speed across the keys. He reorganized her spreadsheets, flagged fraudulent transactions, drafted a letter to the bank requesting a meeting to review unauthorized account access. "You know bookkeeping," Maya said, surprised. "I know a few things." He continued typing. "Your business model is sound, Maya. Your problem isn't the concept. It's that you've been focused on care while someone else handled the money. We need to flip that. You keep doing what you do best. I'll handle the rest." "But you don't." She stopped. "Danny, I can't ask you to—" He looked up, his gray-green eyes serious. "You're not asking. I'm offering. We're married now. Your problems are my problems. Unless—" Uncertainty flickered across his face. "Unless you want to keep things separate?" Maya thought about it. Everything in her had been trained to be independent, to never rely on anyone after Marcus died. But that independence had left her vulnerable to Richard's manipulation. "No," she said slowly. "We're partners, real partners. If this is going to work, we both have to be all in." Danny's smile transformed his face. "Then let's save your business, Mrs. Mitchell." The name sent a flutter through her stomach. Mrs. Mitchell. She was married again, to a man whose last name she'd just learned. What had she done? But watching Danny work through her finances with careful precision, making notes and suggestions that actually made sense, Maya felt something unexpected. Relief. For the first time in months, she wasn't carrying everything alone. By Monday morning, Maya's panic had crystallized into determination. Danny had spent the weekend reorganizing her office at home, creating systems for tracking clients, billing, and expenses. He'd found discrepancies she'd never noticed, proof of Richard's theft that might actually hold up in court. "I need to visit my clients today," Maya said over breakfast. "Let them know I'm still here, still committed." "I'll come with you," Danny offered. "If you want help?" Maya hesitated. Her clients were elderly, often conservative. How would they react to her suddenly having a husband? But she needed the help, and something about Danny's quiet competence made her trust he could handle it. Their first stop was Mr. James Thompson's small house on the east side. The 82-year-old veteran lived alone, his only company a cat named General and memories of 2 tours in Vietnam. He'd been Maya's first client 3 years ago, and she'd grown to love him like family. She knocked, and Mr. Thompson's gruff voice called out, "It's open." They found him in his recliner, oxygen cannula in place, pill organizer on the side table. His weathered face broke into a smile when he saw Maya. "There's my angel," he said, then noticed Danny. His eyes narrowed. "Who's this?" "Mr. Thompson, this is my husband, Danny. Well, it's a recent development." "Recent? How recent?" 3 days ago recent," Maya admitted, bracing for judgment. But Mr. Thompson just laughed, a wheezing sound that turned into a cough. Danny was at his side immediately, checking his oxygen flow, his movements practiced and sure. "Easy, sir," Danny said. "Slow breaths, that's it." When the coughing subsided, Mr. Thompson studied Danny with new interest. "You've got medical training." "Combat medic, 2 tours in Afghanistan." "Afghanistan?" Mr. Thompson's eyes grew distant. "Different war, same hell." He held out a shaking hand. "James Thompson, 1st Infantry Division, Vietnam, 68 to 70. Danny shook his hand with obvious respect. "Thank you for your service, sir." "Call me James. Any man who married this angel and served his country earned first-name privileges." He turned to Maya. "You could do worse, sweetheart. He's got the touch, not just training, but calling." While Maya went through her usual routine, checking vitals, organizing medications, preparing meals for the week, Danny examined Mr. Thompson's pill organizer with a frown. "Sir, may I ask about your medications?" They reviewed the bottles together, and Danny's frown deepened. "You're taking atorvastatin and gemfibrozil together. That's a dangerous combination. Increases risk of muscle breakdown." Mr. Thompson blinked. "My doctor prescribed them both." "Different doctors?" Danny asked gently. "Well, yeah, cardiologist and primary care. They don't talk to each other much." This could be serious. Danny looked at Maya. "He needs a medication review. These interactions could explain his weakness and confusion." Maya's heart clenched. She'd been managing Mr. Thompson's care for months and had missed this, but Danny had spotted it in minutes. They spent the next hour calling Mr. Thompson's doctors, arranging for a pharmacy consult. By the time they left, the old veteran was clasping Danny's hand with tears in his eyes. "You might have just saved my life, son," he said. "Maya, you keep this one. He's good people." In the car, Maya turned to Danny. "How did you see that? I've been checking his medications for months." "You were managing what he had. I was looking at whether what he had made sense together." Danny shrugged. "It's just training." "It's more than training," Maya said softly. "You have a gift, Danny. Why aren't you using it?" His hands tightened on his knees. "That's a longer conversation, for another day." Maya wanted to push, but she remembered Pastor Gloria's words, "Give him the grace to reveal himself in his own time." So she just reached over and squeezed his hand, and they drove to the next client in comfortable silence. Word spread quickly through Maya's small network of clients. The new husband, the quiet man with medical knowledge, the veteran who treated their dignity as sacred. Mrs. Patterson, recovering from a double mastectomy, cried when Danny helped adjust her drainage tubes with practiced gentleness. Finally, someone who doesn't look at me like I'm broken. The Johnson family, caring for their mother with Alzheimer's, marveled at how Danny could calm the elderly woman when she grew agitated, his soft voice and patient presence somehow reaching through her confusion. By the end of the week, Maya's phone was ringing with referrals, clients telling their friends, church members calling. Even the hospital discharge planner, who usually ignored small agencies like hers, suddenly wanted to meet. "I don't understand," Maya said Friday night as they reviewed the week's unexpected growth. "We're still in financial crisis. Richard and Simone are still out there, but somehow things are getting better." Danny looked up from the paperwork he was organizing. "You're good at what you do, Maya. You just needed someone to handle the business side so your work could shine through. That's all I'm doing, clearing the path so people can see what was always there." But Maya suspected it was more than that. The way he'd reorganized her office, the connections he'd somehow made to get better supply prices, the mysterious phone call she'd overheard where he'd convinced a medical equipment company to extend her credit terms. Who was Danny Mitchell? Really? That night, unable to sleep, Maya found him on the back porch. He sat on the steps in his worn jacket, looking up at the stars. She settled beside him, pulling her cardigan tighter against the cool April air. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Thinking?" "About?" He was quiet for a long moment. "About second chances. About whether I deserve this." "This? You. This life. The way your Mr. Thompson looks at me like I'm worth something." His voice was rough. "I haven't felt worth anything in a long time, Maya." She didn't know what to say, so she just moved closer, resting her head on his shoulder. They sat like that, listening to crickets and distant traffic, until Danny's arm came around her waist, tentative but warm. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not what I've lost, not what I don't have. Just me." Maya's throat tightened. "Thank you for the same." Above them, stars wheeled through their ancient patterns, and on the porch of a small yellow house in Charleston, two people who'd married as strangers began the slow, careful work of becoming something more. The crisis came on a Wednesday. Maya was in her office, the converted spare bedroom at home, when her phone rang. Greenwood Senior Living, her largest contract, the facility that accounted for 40% of her revenue. "Ms. Richardson, this is Director Harrison. I'm calling to inform you that we'll be terminating our contract with Harmony Home Care, effective immediately." Maya's stomach dropped. "What? Why?" "We've received concerning information about your business practices and personal stability. Given our responsibility to our residents, we can't take risks with our care providers." "What information? From whom?" "I'm not at liberty to say. Our legal team advised—" "Was it Richard Palmer? From Premier Care Solutions?" A pause. "Mr. Palmer did reach out with some concerns, yes. He indicated you were going through personal difficulties that were affecting your professional judgment. The fact that you recently entered into a hasty marriage with an unknown individual raised red flags." Heat flooded Maya's face. "That's defamation. Richard has been embezzling from my company. He's trying to destroy my business so he can steal my clients." "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Richardson. Do you have proof?" "I'm gathering evidence." "Then I suggest you focus on that rather than on contracts you can no longer fulfill. Good day." The line went dead. Maya sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear. 40% of her revenue, gone. The Greenwood contract had been her anchor, her proof that Harmony Home Care was legitimate, successful, worth investing in. Without it, the bank would never extend her credit. The foreclosure would proceed. Richard would win. She didn't realize she was crying until Danny appeared in the doorway. "Maya? What happened?" The story poured out between sobs. Danny's face grew harder with each word, a cold fury she hadn't seen before flickering in his eyes. "This ends now," he said quietly. "How?" "Danny, without that contract—" "I'll handle it." He pulled out a phone, not the basic flip phone she'd seen him use, but a sleek smartphone that looked expensive and out of place in his calloused hands. "Who are you calling?" "Someone who owes me a favor." He stepped out of the room, and Maya heard his voice change, lower, more authoritative, the voice of someone used to giving orders and being obeyed. 10 minutes later, he returned. "The contract will be reinstated by tomorrow morning." "How can you possibly know that?" "I know people who consult for Greenwood's parent corporation. I called in a favor, explained that Richard Palmer has been spreading false information as part of a harassment campaign. They're reviewing the termination." He touched her face gently. "Maya, I would never let him destroy what you've built. Never." She searched his face, seeing secrets behind those storm-colored eyes. "Who are you, Danny?" "I'm your husband. I'm the man who promised to walk beside you. That's all that matters right now." "But how did you—" He kissed her forehead. "One day soon, I'll tell you everything, I promise. But right now, just trust that I will never let Richard destroy what you've built. Never." The conviction in his voice made her believe him. Even though logic screamed that homeless veterans didn't have connections at major senior living facilities, even though nothing about this made sense, she chose faith over fear. "Okay," she whispered, "I trust you." That weekend, they attended service at Pastor Gloria's church. Maya felt self-conscious walking in with Danny, aware of curious glances and whispered conversations. But Pastor Gloria welcomed them warmly, introducing Danny as her nephew and Maya as her new niece. The sermon was about mustard seed faith, how the smallest belief could move mountains. Maya found herself crying during the closing hymn, "It is well with my soul," Danny's deep voice blending with hers as they sang about peace in the midst of storms. After service, they were invited to Sunday dinner at the pastor's home. Joseph Mitchell, Pastor Gloria's husband, was a gentle giant of a man with kind eyes and skilled hands in the kitchen. Over fried chicken and collard greens, they shared stories and laughter. "Gloria tells me you two got hitched in quite a hurry," Joseph said, passing the cornbread. "Reminds me of us 43 years ago." "Joseph proposed to me at a bus station," Pastor Gloria added, squeezing her husband's hand. "Everyone said we were crazy. Maybe we were, but crazy worked for us." "How did you know?" Maya asked. "That it was right?" Pastor Gloria considered. "I didn't, not at first, but I knew I felt safer with Joseph than I ever had with anyone else. I knew he saw me, really saw me, when everyone else just saw a runaway girl. Sometimes that's enough to build on." Maya glanced at Danny, finding him already looking at her. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of family and the smell of home cooking, something shifted between them. A recognition, an acknowledgement that whatever this was, it was becoming real. After dinner, Danny helped Joseph with dishes while Maya and Pastor Gloria sat on the porch. "He's carrying a heavy burden," the pastor said quietly. "I can see it in his eyes. Whatever he went through these past years, it changed him." "Do you know what happened?" "Some. His wife died of cancer 4 years ago. Then his business partners and his fiancée, the woman he turned to after Margaret passed, they betrayed him, stole his company, left him with nothing." Pastor Gloria shook her head. "He disappeared after that. I prayed every day he'd find his way back." Maya's heart clenched. No wonder Danny understood betrayal so deeply. He'd lived it too. "He's found something in you," Pastor Gloria continued. "I can see it. The way he looks at you, that's not pretend, child. That's a man starting to hope again." That evening, as they drove home through Charleston's historic district, Maya worked up her courage. "Pastor Gloria told me about your wife, about Margaret." Danny's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "She did? I'm sorry. Cancer is— I watched my Marcus waste away. There's nothing that prepares you for that helplessness." "No," Danny said quietly. "There isn't." They drove in silence for a few blocks before he continued. "Margaret died 4 years ago. I thought I was ready to move on. Met someone, Claire, at a grief support group. She seemed to understand. We got engaged." His laugh was bitter. "Turns out she understood very well. She and my business partners had been planning to take everything the whole time. The company I built, the foundation I created in Margaret's name. They forged documents, froze me out, and when I tried to fight, they painted me as mentally unstable from grief." "Danny, I lost everything," he said, staring straight ahead. "Not just money, my reputation, my identity, my belief that good things happen to good people. I walked away from it all because fighting meant becoming someone I didn't want to be." He pulled up in front of their house, killing the engine. "So I became no one instead. Just a guy with a backpack and no past." Maya reached for his hand. "You're not no one. You're the man who saved Mr. Thompson's life, who makes me laugh when I want to cry, who's helping me save my business, even though you have every reason to never trust anyone again." Danny turned to face her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You make me want to be someone again, Maya, someone worth knowing. You already are." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't known she'd shed. "I'm falling in love with you. I know it's too soon. I know we're supposed to take this slow, but Maya kissed him. Not gentle like in the church, but desperate and real, pouring everything she couldn't say into the press of her lips against his. He responded instantly, his arms pulling her close as the kiss deepened, weeks of careful distance dissolving. In the warmth of finally being honest about what they both felt. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling too," she whispered, "and it terrifies me." "Me too. So what do we do?" Danny smiled, that rare full smile that transformed his face. "We keep falling. Together." They sat in the car a while longer, holding each other as streetlights flickered on and Charleston settled into evening. Above them, the first stars appeared, and inside their chests, two broken hearts began to beat in sync, learning the rhythm of hope after despair, trust after betrayal, love after loss. If this story is touching your heart, I'd love to hear where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. Chapter 3. 6 weeks after their midnight wedding, Harmony Home Care had transformed beyond recognition. The morning sun streamed through the office windows as she reviewed the week's schedule. 15 active clients, up from 8 when Danny had arrived. 3 new staff members, all trained by Danny in proper patient care protocols. And waiting on her desk, an embossed invitation that made her hands tremble with excitement. "Danny," she called out, "come look at this." He appeared from the supply room, inventory clipboard in hand, his hair still damp from his morning shower. These days he looked less like the man she'd met in the diner and more like someone who'd found his way home. He'd filled out slightly, the hollows in his cheeks smoothed by regular meals. His clothes were still simple, but clean and mended. He'd refused to let Maya buy him new things, insisting he could make do with what he had. "What is it?" He peered over her shoulder, and Maya caught the scent of the simple soap he used, clean and honest like him. "The Charleston Community Health Fair. They want Harmony Home Care to have a vendor booth." She turned to face him, beaming. "Danny, this is huge. Every major healthcare provider in the region will be there. Insurance companies, hospital systems, the works." A shadow crossed his face, so brief she almost missed it. "That's wonderful, Maya. You don't sound excited." "I am." He squeezed her shoulder. "You've worked hard for this recognition. You deserve it." But something in his voice felt off. Maya had learned to read his moods over these months, the way his jaw tightened when he was worried, how he'd go quiet when something troubled him. She saw both signs now. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. He set down his clipboard. "I'm not good with crowds, public events. I'd rather stay back, handle things here while you shine at the fair." Maya frowned. It was true that Danny avoided photographs, always finding reasons to step out of frame when clients wanted pictures. And he'd declined to attend the business networking mixer she'd gone to last month. She'd assumed it was humility, or discomfort with attention. But now she wondered if it was something else. "Danny, are you hiding from someone?" His eyes met hers, storm gray and conflicted. "I'm just trying to keep the focus on you and your work. That's where it belongs." It wasn't a real answer, but before Maya could push, her phone rang. The office line. She answered to find an eager voice on the other end. "Ms. Richardson? This is Kelly Wu from Charleston Magazine. We're doing a feature on innovative small businesses, and several people recommended Harmony Home Care. Would you be available for an interview and photo shoot?" Maya's heart soared. "Yes, absolutely." The interview was scheduled for that Friday. Kelly Wu arrived with a photographer, both young and energetic. They spent 2 hours touring the office, photographing Maya with her case files and medical supplies, asking questions about her business model and her inspiration. "What made you focus on home health care?" Kelly asked, her recorder running. "My late husband Marcus died of cancer 3 years ago." Maya's voice was steady now when she spoke of him, the grief transformed into purpose. Near the end, he needed round-the-clock care. I saw how much dignity meant to him, being in his own home, surrounded by familiar things, treated as a person rather than a patient. I wanted to give that to others. "And I understand you recently remarried?" "I did." Maya smiled, thinking of Danny in the back office, probably reorganizing something. My husband has medical training and a gift for patient care. Could we get a photo of you both? Maya hesitated, remembering Danny's reluctance. He's quite camera shy. This is really my story anyway. But Kelly persisted, and eventually Maya called Danny out. He came reluctantly, staying mostly behind Maya in the shots, his face turned slightly away. The photographer tried to get him to look at the camera, but Danny deflected with practiced ease. Just focus on Maya, he said with that gentle smile that still made her heart skip. She's the star here. After they left, Maya found Danny in the supply room, unnecessarily reorganizing medical kits. You okay? She asked. Fine. But his hands were shaking slightly as he lined up bandage boxes. Maya wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her cheek against his shoulder. Thank you for doing that. I know it was hard for you. He turned in her embrace, his arms coming around her waist. Nothing's too hard if it helps you succeed. He kissed her forehead. I just prefer being behind the scenes. My mysterious husband, she teased, but underneath she felt a flutter of concern. What was Danny so afraid of people seeing? The magazine article ran 2 weeks before the health fair. By then, they'd been married almost 4 months, and Maya had never been happier. The photo they'd chosen showed Maya in her office, looking confident and professional. In the background, Danny was a blur, just enough to show someone was there, but not enough to make out features clearly. The article praised Harmony Home Care's compassionate care model and innovative approach to elderly services. It mentioned Maya's recent marriage to a medical professional who assists with client care, but kept the focus on her journey from grief to purpose. Response was immediate. Maya's phone rang constantly with new client inquiries. The hospital discharge planner called to set up a formal partnership. Even a local nursing school reached out about potential internship placements. This is it, Maya told Danny over dinner that evening. This is everything I dreamed of when I started this business. Danny smiled, but his eyes held that shadow again. You've earned every bit of it. That night, Maya lay in bed thinking about how much had changed. She'd moved Danny from the spare room to her bedroom 2 weeks ago, a decision that had felt both terrifying and inevitable. Now she couldn't imagine sleeping without his solid warmth beside her, his gentle breathing in the darkness. Danny, she whispered. Are you happy? Really happy? He rolled to face her, his hand finding hers in the dark. Happier than I've been in years. Why? You just seem worried sometimes, like you're waiting for something bad to happen. A long pause. Old habits. When you've lost everything once, it's hard to trust that good things will last. Maya squeezed his hand. I'm not going anywhere. I know. He pulled her closer. I know. But lying there in the darkness, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that Danny was keeping something from her, something big, and she couldn't decide if she wanted to know what it was or if she was better off not asking. The Charleston Community Health Fair was held at the Convention Center on a brilliant Saturday in July. The massive hall buzzed with energy, vendor booths displaying everything from medical equipment to pharmaceutical samples, healthcare professionals networking, families wandering through collecting information and free samples. Maya had spent hours preparing. Her booth featured professional displays about Harmony Home Care's services, testimonials from satisfied clients, and informational brochures she'd designed with Danny's help. She wore her best dress, a royal blue sheath that Marcus had loved, and her grandmother's pearl earrings for luck. Danny had kissed her that morning and wished her well, but he'd been adamant about staying home. Someone needs to be available for our on-call clients, he'd said. You've got this, Maya. Go show them what you're made of. Now, standing in her booth as crowds flowed past, Maya felt proud. Several nursing home administrators stopped to chat. A representative from a major insurance company took her card. People recognized her from the magazine article, complimenting her work. Then, across the crowded hall, she saw them. Richard and Simone stood at an elaborate booth 3 times the size of Maya's. The Premier Care Solutions logo gleamed in chrome and glass. Behind them, promotional videos played on large screens. They'd clearly spent a fortune on the display. Simone spotted her first. She said something to Richard, and they both turned to stare. Then Simone smiled, that sharp, predatory smile Maya had once thought was friendly, and started walking toward her. Maya's stomach clenched, but she stood tall. She would not let them intimidate her. Not here. Not anymore. Maya, Simone's voice carried false warmth. Look at your cute little booth. How quaint. She was dressed in designer clothes, her hair professionally styled, Maya's grandmother's necklace still glinting at her throat. The sight of it made Maya's hands curl into fists. Simone, Maya kept her voice level. You're wearing stolen property? Oh, this old thing. Simone touched the necklace. You gave it to me, remember? A gift between best friends. I lent it to you, for a funeral that never happened. Well, possession is 9/10 of the law, sweetheart. Simone's eyes scanned Maya's booth with obvious disdain. Speaking of law, I'm surprised to see you here. Surprised you can afford the booth fee, given your financial troubles. Richard joined them, looking smug in an expensive suit. Maya, you're looking, well, considering. Considering what? Considering your unfortunate situation. He glanced around conspiratorially. I heard about your hasty marriage. Office gossip travels fast. A homeless man from a diner. Really, Maya, we're worried about you. Heat flooded Maya's face. My personal life is none of your concern. It becomes our concern when it affects the industry's reputation, Richard said smoothly. Healthcare providers need to maintain certain standards. Marrying a vagrant you picked up off the streets raises questions about your judgment. A small crowd was gathering, drawn by the tension. Maya saw faces she recognized from earlier conversations, now watching with curious expressions. Her hands trembled with rage and humiliation, but she kept her voice steady. My husband is a decorated combat veteran with medical training. He's been instrumental in growing my business. Your husband, Simone made air quotes, the mysterious man with no background, no credentials, no past that anyone can verify. Come on, Maya, we all know what he is, a con artist who saw a vulnerable widow and took advantage. That's not true, isn't it? Richard pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. We had him investigated. These are from 6 months ago. He turned the screen to show Maya and the gathering crowd. The photos showed Danny, unmistakably Danny, in tattered clothes, eating from a trash can behind a restaurant. Another showed him at a homeless shelter's soup kitchen. A third captured him sleeping on a bench in Marion Square. This is the man you married, Richard announced loudly, making sure everyone could hear. This is who you trust with your clients' lives. A homeless drifter with no traceable history beyond living on the streets. Maya's vision tunneled. The photos were real. She recognized Danny's face, his jacket. This was him before they'd met. This was his truth. But Richard wasn't done. We reached out to several veterans organizations. No one named Daniel Mitchell appears in their databases for the time frame he claims to have served. No military records we can find. No employment history. Nothing. Maybe you didn't look hard enough, Maya said, but her voice cracked. Or maybe, Simone said sweetly. He's been lying to you all along, creating a false identity to prey on your kindness. It's actually quite sad, Maya. First Marcus dies, then we had to step away from our friendship because we could see you needed space, and now this imposter is taking advantage of your loneliness. The crowd murmured. Maya saw judgment in their eyes, pity, concern. Someone was recording on their phone. This humiliation was being captured, would be shared, would follow her forever. A woman approached, middle-aged, professional, with a press badge clipped to her blazer. Ms. Richardson, I'm Bonnie Weber from the Charleston Post and Courier. I'd like to hear your response to these allegations. There's nothing to respond to, Maya said, her throat tight. Your husband is a fraud, Richard interrupted, and we feel obligated to warn the community. People trust their loved ones to home health care providers. They deserve to know that Harmony Home Care is run by someone whose judgment is so compromised that she married a con artist she met in a diner. The words hit like physical blows. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in her ears. The photos of Danny eating from trash, sleeping on benches, they were branded into her mind now. Had she been fooled again? Was Danny just another person using her? No. She remembered his gentle hands caring for Mr. Thompson, his patient voice calming Mrs. Patterson, the way he'd rebuilt her business systems, never asking for anything in return, the way he held her at night, his arms a safe harbor in the storm. But the doubt was there now, planted like poison seeds. I think we're done here, Maya said, her voice shaking. This is harassment. This is community service, Simone countered. Someone has to protect vulnerable people from predators, even if the predator has charmed his way into your bed. Maya turned and fled, abandoning her booth, pushing through the crowd. Behind her, she heard Bonnie Weber calling questions, heard Richard and Simone spreading more poison. The hall spun, faces blurred. Everyone was staring, judging, recording. She burst through the convention center doors into blinding sunlight, gasping for air. Her phone buzzed insistently, texts probably, or calls from people who'd witnessed the scene. She couldn't look, couldn't face any of it. She drove home on autopilot, tears streaming down her face. The photos haunted her. Danny eating garbage. Danny homeless, desperate, invisible. Was that who she'd married? Not a fallen professional trying to rebuild, but someone who'd never been anything at all? When she pulled up to the house, Danny's borrowed truck, a rusted vehicle from Pastor Gloria, sat in the driveway. He came out as she parked, his face filled with concern. Maya, you're home early. What happened? She got out of the car and he reached for her. She stepped back. Is it true? Her voice was raw. The photos of you eating from trash cans, sleeping on benches, is that who you were? His face went pale. Maya, just answer the question. Yes. The word fell between them like a stone. Yes, I was homeless. I lived on the streets for 8 months. I ate from trash cans when the shelters were full. His voice cracked. I was broken, Maya. I lost everything and I didn't know how to be a person anymore. And the military records? Richard said he couldn't find any records of Daniel Mitchell serving. Danny's jaw tightened. That's because he stopped, struggling with something internal. It's complicated. Complicated how? Maya's voice rose. Danny, Richard, and Simone just humiliated me in front of every major healthcare provider in Charleston. They showed photos of you. They said you're a con artist, that you've been lying about everything. Tell me they're wrong. They are wrong. Then prove it. Show me your military ID, your discharge papers, something, anything that proves you're who you say you are. I can't, Danny said quietly. The words hit like a slap. Can't or won't. Maya, please, just trust me. Trust you? She laughed, bitter and broken. That's what I did with Richard, with Simone. I trusted and I got destroyed. How do I know you're not doing the same thing? Because I love you. His voice was raw with desperation. Because everything I've done has been to help you, not hurt you. I never took anything from you. I only gave. You gave me lies, Maya whispered. You let me build my life on someone who might not even exist. I exist. I'm right here. I'm the man who fixed Mr. Thompson's medications, who held you while you cried about Marcus, who has no past, no records, no proof of anything. Maya's hands shook. I stood there while they showed everyone those photos, while they called me a fool, while they destroyed my credibility because I married a man I don't even really know. Danny reached for her and she backed away, hitting the porch railing. Don't. Just don't. Maya, if you let me explain. Explain what? Why you lied? Why you let me think you were some fallen professional when you were actually just… She couldn't finish. The words were too cruel. But the damage was done. Danny's face crumbled. I never lied about who I am, only about what I have. That's still lying. Tears streamed down her face. You should have told me. Before we got married, before I let you into my business, into my life, into my heart, you should have told me the truth. You're right. His voice was hollow. You're absolutely right. I was afraid you wouldn't… He stopped, swallowing hard. I was afraid to lose you. Well, congratulations, Maya said bitterly. You lost me anyway. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything breaking. What do you want me to do? Danny asked finally. I want you to leave. The words tasted like ash. I need time to think, to figure out who you really are and whether any of this was real. It's all real, Maya. Everything between us. Just go. Her voice broke. Please, I can't look at you right now. Danny stood frozen for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, turned and walked into the house. Maya heard him moving in the bedroom, their bedroom, gathering his things. He emerged 15 minutes later with the same backpack he'd arrived with, nothing more. He'd taken nothing she'd given him, none of the clothes she'd bought despite his protests, none of the small comforts, just the backpack and the wedding ring on his finger. I love you, he said from the doorway. That's the truest thing I've ever said in my life, and I'm sorry. For everything." Then he was gone, walking down the driveway as the afternoon sun cast his shadow long behind him. Maya watched until he turned the corner, disappearing from sight. Only then did she collapse on the porch steps and let the sobs come, great wrenching sounds that tore from her chest, because this hurt worse than Richard's betrayal, worse than losing Marcus. This was losing someone she'd actually chosen, someone she'd believed in despite all her wounds, someone who'd made her hope again. And she didn't know if he'd been real or just another beautiful lie. The weekend passed in a blur of pain. Maya ignored her phone, dozens of messages from clients, staff, people who'd witnessed the scene at the health fair. She couldn't face any of it, couldn't face the questions, the judgments, the pity. Sunday morning she forced herself to shower and dress, church. She needed Pastor Gloria's wisdom, needed to be somewhere that felt safe. But when she arrived at New Mercy Fellowship, the whispers followed her. Kind faces turned sympathetic. People who'd celebrated her marriage now looked at her with concern. She lasted through the opening hymn before fleeing to Pastor Gloria's office. The pastor found her there 10 minutes later, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, child," Pastor Gloria gathered her into a hug. "I heard what happened. Richard Palmer's been spreading that story all over town." "It's true, though," Maya sobbed. "The photos. Danny was homeless, and he can't prove anything about his past. Pastor Gloria, what if I've been wrong about him? What if he's been using me?" The pastor settled into her chair, studying Maya with those wise eyes. "Has he ever taken anything from you?" "No, but has he ever asked you for money? Pressured you for access to your accounts?" "No." "Has he been cruel to you? Controlling? Manipulative?" "No." Maya wiped her eyes. "He's been kind. So kind. He saved my business, helped my clients, made me feel—" Her voice broke. "He made me feel seen." "Then why are you ready to throw him away based on his past circumstances rather than his present actions?" "Because I'm scared," the words burst out. "I'm scared that I've been fooled again, that I'm the idiot everyone thinks I am, that I can't trust my own judgment because look what happened with Richard, with Simone. How do I know Danny's not just better at hiding his true intentions?" Pastor Gloria was quiet for a long moment. "You know what I see when I look at my nephew? I see a man who lost everything, his wife, his company, his entire identity, and had to rebuild himself from nothing. I see someone who learned that stripped of all the trappings, all he had left was his character. And he chose to make that character something worth knowing. But why didn't he tell me? About being homeless, about whatever else he's hiding. Fear, probably. Shame." The pastor leaned forward. "Maya, do you know how much courage it takes to show your rock bottom to someone you love? To risk them seeing you at your worst and deciding you're not worth the trouble?" Maya thought about those photos. Danny eating from trash, sleeping on benches, the invisible man nobody saw, nobody helped. Until she did. "He told me once that people see you differently when you have nothing," she whispered, "that you stop mattering. And you saw him anyway. You defended him, fed him, eventually loved him." Pastor Gloria squeezed her hand. "Child, what if the reason he couldn't tell you is because he was terrified of losing the one person who'd ever seen his worth when he had nothing to offer?" The words hit like a physical blow. Maya remembered that first night in the diner, the manager trying to throw Danny out, her own impulsive defense of a stranger, the way Danny had looked at her with such grateful surprise, as if kindness was a miracle he'd forgotten existed. "I sent him away," Maya said, fresh tears falling. "I told him to leave." "Then maybe it's time to ask yourself what you're really afraid of. His past? Or your own capacity to make mistakes?" Pastor Gloria's voice was gentle but firm. "Because I'll tell you what I know. You can either let Richard and Simone poison every good thing in your life, or you can choose to trust the evidence of your own heart. What has Danny's presence in your life actually produced? Growth? Healing? Love?" "Yes," Maya whispered. "Then maybe that's your answer." But by Monday morning, when Maya finally checked her messages, the damage was undeniable. 3 clients had canceled, citing concerns about care standards. The nursing school had withdrawn their internship proposal, and the hospital partnership, the one that would have transformed her business, had sent a formal letter terminating negotiations. Due to recent questions regarding Harmony Home Care's professional standards and leadership stability, we have decided to pursue other partnerships. Maya sat at her kitchen table, the letter trembling in her hands. Richard and Simone had done exactly what they'd threatened. They'd destroyed her credibility, poisoned her relationships, stolen her future. Her phone rang. The bank. Ms. Richardson, this is David Chen. I'm calling to inform you that your line of credit has been suspended pending review. Additionally, we'll need immediate payment on your outstanding loan balance, or we'll have no choice but to initiate foreclosure proceedings. How much time do I have? 72 hours. We've already initiated proceedings due to the severity of the delinquency. After the call ended, Maya pulled up her finances. Even with the improvements Danny had made, she was nowhere close to having $47,000. The only asset she had was the house itself, and that was the very thing the bank wanted to take. She tried calling clients who'd canceled, hoping to salvage the relationships. Most didn't answer. The one who did was apologetic, but firm. My mother means everything to me, Ms. Richardson. I can't take risks with her care. Surely you understand. Maya did understand. That was the worst part. If she'd been in their position, hearing rumors about a home health care provider who'd married a homeless stranger with no verifiable background, she'd have concerns too. By Wednesday, she'd lost 6 clients total. By Friday, she'd had to let 2 of her 3 staff members go. Couldn't afford to pay them without the revenue. The house felt enormous and empty without Danny. His absence was everywhere. The coffee he didn't make, the repairs left undone, the silent evenings without his gentle presence. Maya lay in bed at night, reaching for him in the darkness, finding only cold sheets. She'd tried calling him several times, but his phone went straight to voicemail. She'd even driven past Pastor Gloria's house, hoping to see his truck. It wasn't there. He's staying with friends, Pastor Gloria said when Maya finally called her. He wanted to give you space, but child, he's hurting. I've never seen him like this. I'm hurting too, Maya said, and it was true. Everything hurt. Her business was collapsing, her reputation was in ruins, and the man she'd fallen in love with, the man she'd sent away, was gone. That Sunday, Maya skipped church. She couldn't face more pitying looks, more whispered conversations. Instead, she sat in her office surrounded by bills she couldn't pay, contracts she couldn't fulfill, dreams turning to dust. Her laptop was still open to the financial spreadsheet Danny had created. His careful notations in the margin, his suggestions for efficiency, his belief that her business could thrive if she just had the right support. She clicked through to her email and found a message from Bonnie Weber, the journalist from the health fair. Ms. Richardson, I'd like to speak with you about the allegations made by Richard Palmer and Simone Carter. I've been investigating some things, and I believe there's more to this story. Please call me. Maya stared at the message. More to this story. What could possibly be left to uncover? What other humiliation waited? But something in the journalist's tone made her dial the number. Ms. Weber, this is Maya Richardson. Thank you for calling. Bonnie's voice was professional but warm. I know you're going through a difficult time, but I need to tell you something. Richard Palmer and Simone Carter, they're not who they claim to be. Maya's heart started pounding. What do you mean? I've been investigating Premier Care Solutions for another story. There are multiple complaints filed against them. Medicare fraud, patient neglect, forged credentials. Richard Palmer never completed his healthcare administrator certification. Simone Carter has a suspended nursing license from Virginia that she failed to disclose when she started practicing in South Carolina. The room tilted. What? They're criminals, Ms. Richardson, and they've been using your reputation to legitimize their operation. The whole attack on your husband, that was a distraction. They needed to discredit you before their own fraud came to light. Maya couldn't breathe. Do you have proof? I have documents, testimonies from former employees, even recordings of them discussing how to neutralize the competition, their words, by destroying your credibility. Bonnie paused. There's something else, about your husband. I did some digging, and Ms. Richardson, does the name Daniel James Harrington mean anything to you? The name triggered something in Maya's memory. She'd heard it before. But where? Should it? Daniel James Harrington III is one of the wealthiest healthcare entrepreneurs in the country. He built Harrington Healthcare Systems. That's the national chain of medical clinics and home health agencies. He disappeared from public life 4 years ago after his wife died, and his business partners staged a coup. Maya's vision blurred. What are you saying? I'm saying your husband isn't a con artist, Ms. Richardson. He's a billionaire who walked away from his empire because he wanted to find something real. And based on my research, he found it with you. The phone slipped from Maya's numb fingers, clattering onto the desk. Danny wasn't homeless because he'd failed. He was homeless because he'd chosen it, because he'd wanted to know if anyone would see his value when he had nothing, and she'd sent him away. She'd looked at him the exact same way everyone else had, judging his worth by his circumstances rather than his character. She'd done to him what Richard and Simone had done to her, assumed the worst instead of trusting what she'd seen with her own eyes. "Oh God," she whispered, "what have I done?" The foreclosure notice arrived the next morning, delivered by a courier. 72 hours to vacate the premises. The auction was scheduled for Wednesday morning. The bank was moving forward with foreclosure. In 2 days, she would lose her home, her business, everything Marcus had left her, everything she'd built. And she would lose it alone, because she'd thrown away the one person who'd actually seen her worth. Maya sank to the floor, the notice crumpling in her fist, and finally understood what Danny had been trying to tell her all along. It's not about what you have, it's about who you are, and she'd proven exactly who she was, someone who trusted lies over truth, fear over love, appearances over reality, just like everyone who'd ever walked past Danny on the street, seeing a homeless man instead of a human being. She'd failed him, failed herself, failed everything that mattered. The only question now was whether she could somehow make it right before she lost everything for good. Chapter 4. The courthouse steps felt impossibly steep as Maya climbed them Wednesday morning. 48 hours had passed since the eviction notice arrived, 40 hours of sleepless nights and desperate prayers. Now, dressed in the same blue dress she'd worn to marry Danny, the only nice outfit she owned, she walked toward the auction that would strip away everything she had left. The morning was beautiful, mockingly so. Sunlight painted Charleston's historic buildings in gold, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine from nearby gardens. Maya clutched her purse, empty except for her phone and the foreclosure notice, and tried to breathe past the tightness in her chest. Inside, the auction room was smaller than she'd expected. Dark wood panels, high ceilings, rows of chairs filled with real estate investors and curious onlookers. At the front, an auctioneer in a gray suit shuffled papers. A court reporter sat ready with her stenography machine. Maya chose a seat near the back, wanting to be invisible, to witness the death of her dreams without anyone seeing her cry. But invisibility wasn't an option. Heads turned as she entered. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The woman from the magazine article, the one who'd married the homeless man, the fool who'd lost everything. Then, 2 rows ahead, she saw them. Richard and Simone sat together, dressed like they were attending a cocktail party rather than someone's tragedy. Richard in an expensive suit, Simone in designer clothes with Maya's grandmother's necklace still gleaming at her throat. They turned, spotted her, and smiled. Simone actually waved, Maya's hands clenched into fists. They were here to gloat, to watch her lose her home, her business, everything Marcus had left her, to witness their victory. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Patricia Martinez presiding." The judge entered, a stern-looking woman in her 60s with iron-gray hair and sharp eyes. She settled behind the bench, reviewing papers before nodding to the auctioneer. "We're here today for the foreclosure auction of property located at 412 Maple Street, Charleston, South Carolina," the auctioneer announced. "This property includes both residential dwelling and business premises currently operating as Harmony Home Care. Outstanding debt totals $47,000. Opening bid starts at $200,000. Maya's stomach dropped. $200,000 for a property worth at least $350,000. The bank was practically giving it away. "Do I hear $200,000? The auctioneer called. Richard's hand shot up. $200,000. Of course, they'd planned this all along. Destroy her reputation, tank her business, force foreclosure, then buy her property for nothing. They'd steal everything. Her client list, her business name, even the home where she'd loved Marcus. $210,000, called another voice, a developer Maya recognized from Chamber of Commerce meetings. 225, Richard countered, glancing back at Maya with that smug smile. The bidding continued. 240, 250, 260. Each increase felt like another piece of her heart being carved away. Maya closed her eyes, praying for strength, for acceptance, for some way to survive what came next. 300,000, Richard said firmly. The room fell quiet. At that price, most investors were out. Richard looked around triumphantly, then back at Maya. Going once, the auctioneer said. Maya's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Not here, not in front of them. Going twice! The door at the back of the courtroom opened. Every head turned. Maya heard gasps, whispers of recognition. She turned too, and her heart stopped. Danny stood in the doorway, but not the Danny she knew. This man wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. His hair was professionally cut, his face clean-shaven. He carried himself with quiet authority, his storm-gray eyes scanning the room before landing on her. And in that moment, Maya saw him truly for the first time. Not homeless, not broken, not the gentleman who'd fixed her sink and swept her floors. This was Daniel James Harrington III, billionaire, healthcare magnate, the man who'd built an empire and walked away from it, the man she'd married in a midnight ceremony because she'd been desperate and he'd been kind. Mr. Harrington, the auctioneer said, his voice suddenly deferential. This is unexpected. We didn't know you were in Charleston. I've been here for months, Daniel said, moving down the aisle. His eyes never left Maya's face. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but I believe we have business to conduct. Simone's face had gone white. Richard looked like he'd been slapped. Around the room, phones appeared as people tried to photograph the billionaire who disappeared from public life 4 years ago. Maya couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Danny stopped 3 rows ahead of her, close enough that she could see the emotion in his eyes, hope and fear and desperate love all mixed together. The current bid stands at $300,000, the auctioneer said, recovering his professional composure. Mr. Palmer has bid $300,000. $1 million, Danny said calmly. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Richard half rose from his seat, face red with anger. You can't. I can and I am. Danny's voice carried quiet steel. $1 million, cash, available for immediate transfer. He looked directly at Richard. You wanted to buy my wife's life's work for pennies on the dollar. You wanted to steal everything she built while she was at her lowest. So yes, I'm paying 5 times what this property is worth, because unlike you, I understand that some things, dignity, justice, love, are priceless. Mr. Harrington, the judge leaned forward, do you have any financial interest in this property that the court should be aware of? My wife owns it, Your Honor. Danny turned to look directly at Maya, his eyes pleading. Or she will, once this auction concludes. I'm simply ensuring she doesn't lose everything to people who stole from her. Your wife? The judge's eyebrows rose. Maya Richardson. We married 4 months ago. He held up his left hand, showing the simple gold band, the same one Maya had placed there in Pastor Gloria's church. I know it's unconventional, but then again, so am I. The judge studied them both, then looked at Richard and Simone. Mr. Palmer, do you wish to counter this bid? Richard's mouth opened and closed. $1 million. He couldn't match it, wouldn't even if he could. The property wasn't worth it, not financially. This is highly irregular, Richard sputtered. So is Medicare fraud, said a new voice. Bonnie Weber stood in the doorway, accompanied by 2 people in dark suits. FBI, Maya realized with shock. The press badges on their belts were impossible to miss. Your Honor, Bonnie said, I apologize for the interruption. I'm Bonnie Weber from the Charleston Post and Courier. These special agents have time-sensitive warrants from the FBI's Healthcare Fraud Division. They have warrants for the arrest of Richard Palmer and Simone Carter. We coordinated with the court clerk to minimize disruption, but the suspects were about to leave the jurisdiction. The room exploded into chaos. Richard jumped to his feet. This is ridiculous. We've done nothing wrong. Medicare fraud, insurance fraud, patient endangerment, and conspiracy to commit wire fraud, Agent Chen said, moving forward with handcuffs. Mr. Palmer, Ms. Carter, you need to come with us. Simone grabbed Richard's arm, her composure cracking. Richard, do something. But there was nothing to do. The agents moved efficiently, reading them their rights while journalists in the crowd took photos and videos. Simone's face twisted with rage as she looked back at Maya. This is your fault, she screamed. You and your homeless con artist. That homeless con artist is Daniel James Harrington III, Bonnie interrupted calmly, one of the most respected healthcare entrepreneurs in the country. He built Harrington Healthcare Systems from the ground up and created the Harrington Foundation, which has provided free medical care to over 2 million underserved patients. She smiled. Meanwhile, you two have been running an illegal operation with forged credentials and defrauding Medicare out of hundreds of thousands of dollars, so maybe we should reconsider who the real con artists are. As the FBI agents led Richard and Simone out, Simone still screaming protests, Richard's face gray with defeat, the courtroom remained in stunned silence. The judge cleared her throat. Well, this has certainly been the most interesting foreclosure auction I've overseen. Mr. Harrington, your bid of $1 million is accepted. The property at 412 Maple Street is sold to you. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. But Danny didn't move toward the clerk to handle paperwork. Instead, he turned fully to face Maya, who still sat frozen in her seat, tears streaming down her face. Maya, he said softly, and the room full of people might as well have disappeared. It was just the two of them, the way it had been that first night in the diner. Can we talk? Please? She couldn't form words, could only nod as he approached, offering his hand to help her stand. His palm was warm against hers, calloused still despite the expensive suit, the hands that had fixed her sink and held her while she cried. He led her out of the courthouse, past the gathering crowd of journalists and curious onlookers, down the steps into the brilliant morning. A black car waited at the curb, sleek and expensive, with a driver who opened the door for them without being asked. Where are we going? Maya finally managed. Somewhere we can talk without an audience, Danny said, if that's okay with you. She nodded, climbing into the car. The leather seats were butter soft. Classical music played softly through hidden speakers. This was his world, this luxury, this power, and he'd left it all to eat from trash cans and sleep on benches. They drove in silence through Charleston's historic district, crossing the Ashley River Bridge. Finally, the car pulled up to a small marina. Danny thanked the driver, by name, Maya noticed, and led her down a wooden dock to a sailboat bobbing gently in the water. It's borrowed, he said, helping her aboard. From a friend who owes me a favor. I thought we could use some privacy. The boat was beautiful, but modest. Nothing ostentatious. Danny moved around it with practiced ease, untying lines and starting the motor. Soon they were heading out into Charleston Harbor, the city shrinking behind them as water stretched endlessly ahead. When they were far enough out, Danny killed the motor and dropped anchor. The boat rocked gently on the swells. Seagulls called overhead. The sun was warm on Maya's face. And finally, they were alone. Danny sat across from her, his expensive suit jacket removed, his sleeves rolled up to reveal those weathered forearms. He looked like a strange hybrid, businessman and working man, billionaire and beggar, all wrapped into one complicated, beautiful, heartbreaking person. I'm sorry, he said first, for not telling you, for letting you find out the way you did, for, his voice cracked, for putting you through any of this. Maya wiped at her tears. Who are you, really? My name is Daniel James Harrington III. I built Harrington Healthcare Systems when I was 28, started with one clinic and grew it to a national chain. Made my first million by 30, my first billion by 35. He stared out at the water. I married a woman named Margaret. She was a nurse at my first clinic. We had 10 years together before pancreatic cancer took her. His hands clenched on his knees. After she died, I threw myself into work. My business partners, people I'd trusted, built the company with, convinced me to let them handle operations while I grieved. Then I met Claire at a support group. She seemed to understand. We got engaged. He laughed bitterly. Turns out she and my partners had been planning for months. They forged documents, staged a legal coup, froze me out of my own company, painted me as mentally unstable from grief. Danny, I could have fought, he continued, could have taken them to court, destroyed them the way they tried to destroy me. But the thought of years of litigation, of becoming the kind of person who prioritized winning over everything else, I couldn't do it. So I walked away. From the money, the company, the foundation, all of it. I disappeared. He looked at her then, his storm gray eyes full of pain. I lived on the streets for 8 months, not because I had to, but because I needed to know who I was without the money, without the power, without anything except myself. His voice dropped to a whisper. I needed to know if I could find one person, just one, who would see my value when I had nothing. Maya's heart cracked open. And you found me. I found you. He smiled through tears. In a diner at midnight, defending a stranger because it was the right thing to do. You gave me food, kindness, dignity. You didn't see a homeless man to be pitied or feared. You saw a person worth knowing. Then why didn't you tell me? The question came out broken. After we got married, after I fell in love with you. Why keep lying? Because I was terrified, Danny said simply. Terrified that once you knew about the money, everything would change, that you'd start seeing me differently, that I'd never know if you loved me or what I could give you. He reached for her hands. Maya, you have no idea what it means to have billions of dollars. People treat you differently. They smile and tell you what you want to hear. They pretend to care about you when really they care about your bank account. After what happened with Claire, I couldn't risk losing the only real thing I'd found. But I'm not Claire, Maya said, tears streaming down her face. I'm not Richard or Simone. I would have loved you anyway. I know that now. His thumbs brushed across her knuckles. I see it in the way you looked at me when I was nobody, the way you trusted me with your business, your home, your heart. You loved me at my lowest, Maya. That's when I should have told you everything. I was just so afraid of losing you. You lost me anyway, she whispered, by not trusting me. I know. His voice broke. I know, and I'm so sorry. You deserved the truth. You deserved a partner who was brave enough to show you all of himself, not just the parts he thought you could accept. They sat in silence, the boat rocking beneath them, the water stretching endlessly in all directions. Maya looked at this man, her husband, and saw both versions of him. The homeless veteran who'd swept her floors, the billionaire who'd just spent $1 million to save her home. They were the same person. They'd always been the same person. That first night, she said slowly, in the diner, when you proposed, you said if love can't start with money or history, maybe it can start with mutual respect between two broken people. I meant it, Danny said. I know you did. She squeezed his hands. But Danny, Daniel, whoever you are, love can't survive without honesty, without trust. You kept your truth from me because you were afraid, and I sent you away because I was afraid. We both let fear win. I don't want fear to win anymore, he said fiercely. I want you, Maya. I want the life we were building. I want to help you save Harmony Home Care and grow it into everything you dreamed. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to be the man who deserves you, and that means being completely honest, even when it's terrifying. Then tell me everything, Maya said. No more secrets, no more hiding. Tell me who you really are. So he did. He told her about growing up wealthy but lonely, about parents who cared more about status than connection, about putting himself through medical school only to realize he was better at business than bedside care, about building his company from scratch, the failures and the victories. He told her about Margaret's illness, the helplessness of watching her fade, the grief that had nearly destroyed him, about Claire's betrayal, how she'd seduced him while plotting with his partners to steal everything, about the court battle he'd walked away from rather than become someone he despised. He told her about those 8 months on the streets, the cold nights, the hunger, the invisibility, how people looked through him like he was nothing, how it had stripped away every illusion about human nature, about worth, about love. I learned that we assign value based on surface things, he said. Money, status, appearance. Strip those away and most people see nothing. But you, his voice caught, you saw something worth defending, worth feeding, worth trusting with your broken heart. I saw you, Maya said simply. The real you. The kind man who held coffee cups with careful hands and spoke with educated grace despite wearing rags. The man who fixed Mr. Thompson's medications and made me laugh when I wanted to cry. That's who I fell in love with, Danny. Not homeless you or billionaire you, just you. Then let me be just me, he pleaded. With you. Let me show you that the money doesn't matter except as a tool to help people. Let me prove that I'm still the man who'll sweep your floors and fix your sink and hold you while you cry. The suit is just clothes, Maya. Underneath, I'm still the person you married. Maya looked at him, really looked. The expensive haircut couldn't hide the way his eyes crinkled when he was worried. The tailored suit couldn't disguise the calluses on his hands. The wealth couldn't erase the way he'd held her that night in the diner, the way he'd prayed over her business documents, the way he'd loved her with patient tenderness. I judged you, she said quietly. When Richard and Simone showed those photos, I looked at you the same way everyone else did. I saw a homeless man instead of seeing you. I'm so sorry, Danny. I should have trusted what I knew about your character instead of letting fear poison everything. You were scared, he said. You'd been hurt so many times, I understand. Understanding doesn't make it right. She touched his face, feeling stubble already growing back. I sent you away. I told you to leave. I let Richard and Simone make me doubt the best thing that ever happened to me. Then let's both forgive ourselves, Danny said, leaning into her touch, and each other. Let's start over, right now, with complete honesty. Starting over sounds good, Maya said, but this time, let's do it right. He looked confused. What do you mean? Maya smiled through her tears. You proposed to me in a diner at midnight when I was broken and desperate. We got married in a tiny chapel with borrowed rings and a handful of witnesses. It was beautiful, but she took a deep breath. I want to marry you again, not because we're desperate or hiding or afraid, but because we're choosing each other with open eyes and honest hearts. Danny's face transformed, hope lighting his features like sunrise. You want to marry me again? I want the whole world to know that Maya Richardson chose to marry Daniel James Harrington III. Not for his money, not because I was desperate, but because you're the man who sees me, really sees me, and chooses to build something beautiful together. Yes, he breathed. God, yes. Maya. He slid off his seat, kneeling on the boat's deck. From his pocket, he pulled out a small box. I've been carrying this for 2 weeks, hoping I'd get a chance to give it to you, to do this right. He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple and elegant, a single diamond on a platinum band. Nothing ostentatious, but clearly expensive. And perfect. Maya Elizabeth Richardson, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. I fell in love with you the moment you defended a stranger in a diner. I fell deeper in love with every act of kindness, every moment of grace, every time you chose faith over fear. You're the strongest, most compassionate, most beautiful person I've ever known. Will you marry me again? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that underneath all the money and power, I'm just a man who wants to be worthy of your love? Maya was crying openly now, but they were tears of joy. Yes. 1,000 times, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, and then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and the boat rocked beneath them as the water sparkled all around. This kiss was different from their first, not desperate or uncertain, but full of promise and truth and the wild, beautiful hope of second chances. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and laughing, Danny rested his forehead against hers. No more secrets, he promised. No more fear, she answered. Just us. Just us. They sat there on the boat as the sun climbed higher, talking about everything they'd been too afraid to discuss before. Danny told her about the foundation he wanted to restart, about using his wealth to transform healthcare for vulnerable populations. Maya told him about her dream of expanding Harmony Home Care, training others in compassionate care, building something that would outlast them both. We could do it together, Danny said. Combine resources, your heart and my business sense. We could build something that actually matters. We already are, Maya said, squeezing his hand. We've been building it all along. The next morning, Maya woke to find Danny in her kitchen, their kitchen, making coffee and humming a hymn. He was wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, his feet bare on the tile floor. The billionaire who'd spent $1 million yesterday looked like any husband on a Thursday morning, and Maya's heart swelled with love for him. "Morning," he said, handing her a mug. "I've been thinking about Richard and Simone." Maya's smile faded. "What about them?" "They're in jail, facing serious charges. Bonnie Weber says they could get 15 years if convicted." He stirred his coffee. "Part of me feels like they got what they deserved, but another part feels sorry for them," Maya finished. She'd been wrestling with the same conflict. They destroyed so much, but they're still human, still God's children, even if they've lost their way. "You want to visit them?" Danny said. It wasn't a question. "I think I need to," Maya admitted. "Not for them, for me. I need to forgive them face to face. Otherwise, they'll poison the rest of my life, even from behind bars." Danny kissed her forehead. "That's why I love you. You always choose grace." That afternoon, they drove to the county jail. The building was gray and institutional, smelling of disinfectant and despair. A guard led them to a visiting room divided by plexiglass, where Simone sat in an orange jumpsuit, her perfect hair lank and unwashed, her designer confidence shattered. When she saw Maya, her face crumpled. "Come to gloat?" "No." Maya sat down, picking up the phone. "I came to tell you I forgive you." Simone laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "Why? I destroyed you, or tried to. I stole from you, lied to you, tried to ruin everything you built, and you forgive me?" "Because holding on to hate would destroy me, not you," Maya said quietly. "Because we were friends once, before jealousy and greed poisoned you. Because I remember the girl who held my hand at Marcus's funeral and promised you to always have my back." Tears streamed down Simone's face, smudging the mascara she'd somehow managed to wear even here. "I'm so sorry, Maya. I was so jealous of you. You had everything. Marcus's love, your business, people's respect. And I had nothing. Nothing but Richard and his schemes. I thought destroying you would make me feel better. It just made me feel empty." "I know," Maya said. "I forgive you anyway. I don't deserve it. None of us deserve grace. That's what makes it grace." They talked for 20 more minutes. Really talked, for the first time in years. Simone confessed everything. The affair with Richard, the embezzlement scheme, the Medicare fraud. How they'd convinced themselves they deserved Maya's success because they were smarter and more ambitious. "I'll probably go to prison," Simone said finally. "Richard, too. His lawyer says the evidence is overwhelming." "Then I'll pray for you," Maya said, "that you find redemption there, that you become who you were meant to be instead of who you let yourself become." "You really are a saint," Simone said, but it wasn't mocking anymore, just sad. "No," Maya corrected gently. "I'm just someone who's been forgiven a lot, and that means I need to forgive too." When Maya stood to leave, Simone pressed her hand against the plexiglass. "Maya, can I send you something? It's in my personal effects." "What is it?" "Your grandmother's necklace, the one I stole. You should have it back." Fresh tears pricked Maya's eyes. "Thank you." In the parking lot, Danny held her while she cried, not for what she'd lost, but for what Simone had thrown away, for the friendship that could have been, for the woman who'd chosen ambition over integrity and was now paying the price. "You okay?" Danny asked softly. "I will be," Maya said. "Forgiveness is hard, but hate is harder." The wedding was held 6 weeks later at New Mercy Fellowship. This time, the pews were full. Pastor Gloria had insisted on officiating, her face beaming as she stood before the altar. Mr. Thompson sat in the front row in his wheelchair, wearing his military dress uniform and crying openly. Mrs. Patterson and the Johnson family occupied the second row, all of them Maya's clients who'd become family. Danny's friends from his old life filled the other side, people who'd been searching for him for years, who were just relieved to see him whole and happy. Business partners who'd stayed loyal, foundation employees who'd missed his vision, even his aunt and uncle from Oregon, who'd flown across the country when they heard their lost nephew was getting married. But Maya only had eyes for Daniel, waiting for her at the altar in a simple navy suit. He'd wanted to wear something modest, refusing to make this about wealth or status. His eyes shone with tears as she walked down the aisle in a cream-colored dress, simple but beautiful, with her grandmother's necklace, returned by Simone, gleaming at her throat. This time, it was Mr. Thompson who gave her away, wheeling himself partway down the aisle before standing with effort to place her hand in Danny's. "You take care of her, son," the old veteran said gruffly, "or you answer to me." "Yes, sir," Danny said, his voice thick with emotion. Pastor Gloria opened her worn Bible. "7 months ago, I married these two people in this very church. It was the most unusual wedding I'd ever performed. Two strangers choosing each other in desperation and hope. Today, we're here to celebrate what they've built from that impulsive leap of faith." She looked at them both. "Daniel, Maya, you've learned some hard truths these past months. That love requires honesty. That trust has to be earned and re-earned. That faith means choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Danny's vows were simple but powerful. "Maya, I promise to always tell you the truth, even when it scares me. To trust you with all of who I am, the broken parts and the successful parts, the homeless man and the businessman, the person I was and the person I'm becoming. I promise to see you, really see you, every day of our lives together, to build our future on honesty instead of fear." Maya's voice shook as she spoke her vows. "Daniel, I promise to see your worth regardless of what you have or don't have, to trust your character over your circumstances, to choose faith in us over fear of being hurt. I promise to be your partner in all things, the hard work and the celebrations, the struggles and the victories, to build something beautiful with you, one honest day at a time." The rings they exchanged were their original simple gold bands, cleaned and polished but unchanged. "These rings represent who we were when we first chose each other," Pastor Gloria said, scared, broken, hoping for something real. "Keep them as a reminder that love starts with a choice and grows through commitment." "By the power vested in me," Pastor Gloria declared, "I now pronounce you once again and for always husband and wife. Daniel, kiss your bride like you mean it this time." The kiss was long and deep and full of promise. The church erupted in applause and cheers. Mr. Thompson whooped. Someone started singing Amazing Grace, and soon the whole congregation joined in, the old hymn filling the sanctuary with joy. The reception was held in the church fellowship hall, decorated with simple elegance. Danny had wanted to rent a country club, but Maya had insisted on this, surrounded by the community who'd supported them, who'd prayed for them, who'd believed in them. As they danced their first dance to At Last by Etta James, Maya looked up at her husband, her partner, her love, and felt complete. "No regrets?" Danny whispered. "Not a single one," she answered. "You?" "My only regret is the time we wasted being afraid," he said. "But I guess we needed that to appreciate this." Later, as the party wound down, Bonnie Weber approached them. "I wanted you to know, the article about Richard and Simone runs tomorrow, front page, but I also wrote a feature about you two for the weekend edition." She smiled. "If you're comfortable with it, the real story, not the scandal but the love story, about choosing each other against all odds." Maya looked at Danny, who nodded. "Tell our story," he said. "The whole thing. Maybe it'll help someone else who's struggling, who's afraid to trust again, who thinks their past defines their worth." "That's what I was hoping you'd say," Bonnie said. 5 years later, on a bright Saturday morning in May, Maya Richardson Harrington stood in the lobby of the Harrington Care Center, watching families stream through the doors. The building had been an abandoned hospital when they'd bought it 3 years ago. Now it was a state-of-the-art facility offering everything from home healthcare services to urgent care to long-term care, all on a sliding scale based on ability to pay. The wealthy paid full price. The poor paid what they could or nothing at all, and everyone received the same dignified, compassionate care. "Mama!" a voice called out, and Maya turned to see her daughter racing toward her. Sophie was 7 years old, with Danny's gray eyes and Maya's warm brown skin and a smile that could light up the world. They'd adopted her from foster care 2 years ago, a little girl nobody else wanted because of her medical issues and behavioral challenges. She'd blossomed with love and stability, becoming the joy of their lives. "Daddy says to come outside," Sophie said, grabbing Maya's hand. "He has a surprise." In the courtyard behind the building, Danny was unveiling a bronze plaque. A crowd had gathered, staff, clients, community members. Mr. Thompson sat in his wheelchair in the front, now 87, but still sharp as ever. The plaque read, "The Marcus Richardson Memorial Garden, in honor of a man who believed in building something beautiful. Dedicated by his wife Maya and the Harrington Foundation." Maya's eyes filled with tears. Danny had done this secretly, transforming the courtyard into a healing garden with benches and flowering plants and quiet spaces for reflection. At the center stood a sculpture of hands holding a seedling, representing care, growth, and hope. "Marcus would love this," she whispered. "He'd love what you built," Danny corrected, pulling her close. Sophie squeezed between them, and they stood together as a family, built from broken pieces, glued together with faith and forgiveness and stubborn, beautiful love. That evening, after the dedication ceremony and celebration, after Sophie was tucked into bed with her favorite story, Maya and Danny sat on their back porch. Not the modest house on Maple Street anymore. They'd donated that to Harmony Home Care, which still operated under Maya's original vision, but with 30 staff members now. Instead, they'd built a home in the suburbs, comfortable but not ostentatious, with room for Sophie and the son they were in the process of adopting. "Do you ever think about that night?" Maya asked. "In the diner?" "Every day," Danny said. "I think about how close I came to walking past it, how different our lives would be if you'd decided I wasn't worth defending." "I think God put us in that diner for a reason," Maya said. "Two broken people who needed to learn that worth isn't about what you have. It's about who you are and who you choose to become." "And who you choose to love," Danny added, kissing her temple. Above them, stars appeared one by one in the darkening sky. Inside, Sophie slept soundly, safe and loved. Tomorrow, they'd visit the care center again, check on clients, meet with the foundation board. They'd continue building their life together, imperfect and beautiful and real. Maya thought about Richard and Simone, both serving their sentences in different facilities. She still sent them letters sometimes, still prayed for their redemption. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but it did mean releasing the poison of bitterness. She thought about all the people the care center had helped, thousands of families who'd received compassionate care when they needed it most, all because she'd defended a stranger in a diner, all because that stranger had turned out to be the missing piece of her heart. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For seeing me when I felt invisible, for choosing me when you could have chosen anyone, for teaching me that faith isn't about having all the answers, it's about taking the leap anyway." Danny pulled her closer. "You taught me the same things. We saved each other, Maya. That's what love does. It transforms our broken places into something beautiful." They sat in comfortable silence as night settled over Charleston, the city that had witnessed their desperation, their risks, their failures and triumphs, the city where two strangers had become family. Because sometimes, she'd learned, the craziest decisions really do save your life. Thank you for being part of Maya and Danny's journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe. Tomorrow I'll bring you another story about love, faith, and second chances. God bless you, and remember, your worth isn't determined by what you have or where you've been. It's determined by who you are and who you choose to become. Don't forget to share where you're watching from in the comments below. Until next time, keep believing in miracles.